www.millennials.us/shops.
Welcome, everybody. Thanks a lot for checking out For the People, of the People podcast. I'm your host, Alex. On For the People, of the People, we gather everyday citizens and ask them about rising or hot button topics. You can watch this and other podcast programs on our umbrella, M.A.P.S Media, and on our website, www.millennials.us. And you can find this and other podcasts on our Millennials with a Z Anonymous Facebook page and YouTube pages. We're going to play a quick video intro to introduce our guest today. We'll be right back.
Let's meet our panelists tonight. Sarah Brooke Tobia is a paralegal and social media content creator. Ryan Thompson, entrepreneur and software engineer. James Cook is an engineer and education professional. Kieran Pierce, multinational technology company employee. And our host Alexander Sutton Sharp. We would like to thank our panelists for joining us.
All right, so quick change. We have Michael Cook in place of Kieran Pierce today. So Michael, if you can real quick give a brief introduction of yourself for the audience.
My name is Mike Cook. I am a retired veteran of the United States Army. I now work at a United Healthcare, and live here in Wisconsin.
Awesome. All right, so really appreciate that. So today we're going to have a podcast about libertarian values, libertarian policies, and just basically giving ourselves a chance to be able to go over why people have decided to join this party and inform themselves. So I'd like us first to go over a brief history of how the Libertarian Party was formed. We're going to do this TYT style. So I'm going to pick on one person, and then I want everybody just to join in briefly, and then we'll go to the next one after that. All right, so James can give us a brief history about how the Libertarian Party was formed.
Absolutely. I'd love to. So it was 1971. The one issue that really kind of united libertarians was a closing of the gold window, known as the Bretton Woods Agreement. So the Bretton Woods Agreement was kind of like this loose tie of the monetary, like the dollar, to a specific valuation of gold. So it kind of kept inflation in check. Nixon went off the Bretton Woods system, and libertarians who are very economically inclined saw this is going to increase standard. It's going to reduce standard of living, increase inflation. It's going to have a huge effect, and nobody's talking about it. So they started their own party. They ran their first candidate set in 1971, going into the 72 election. And their first, the first nominees were John Hospers, which was actually the first openly LGBT community person ever nominated to a major party ticket, and Tani Nathan, who later that election was the first female on any to ever receive an electoral college vote in the United States. So those were two real groundbreaking trailblazers, and that's the beginning of the Libertarian Party.
Awesome. Anybody else have anything else they'd like to add to that conversation?
That was a great intro.
Perfect. So let's kind of just get it. All right. So that's how. Let's a real quick why before we move on to this next question. Why do you believe the Libertarian Party formed? Anybody?
I think people were just looking for a better alternative. I think people saw the nation going in a direction that they didn't like, and a lot of politicians offer false and empty promises, and they wanted something that adhered more to the Constitution as it was and not what people were trying to make it out to be.
Gotcha. All right. So Joe Jorgensen is the candidate this year for the Libertarian Party. Can anyone name, I'll go with you, Sarah Brooke, again. Can anyone name key policies that she wants to bring forth if she was elected?
Most importantly for me, why I switched from being a Democrat to a Libertarian is her commitment to not only end the war on drugs, but also end qualified immunity, which will substantially help the Black community, not only in the relationship with the police, but also their economic standing and gang war violence, especially when we're no longer fighting over turf on where we can sell our drugs. We're actually business people making business decisions.
Gotcha. So when you say that, do you mean like instead of policing drug sales, it would just basically be ungoverned and we would let people do whatever they feel like they would like to do?
Absolutely. If you're not hurting anybody, I don't see any reason why you can't do drugs. And some people can and some people cannot. But if you can have a habit and also take care of your bills and responsibilities, who am I to stand in the way of your happiness? But if you also want to have a drug problem that's debilitating and you can no longer feed yourself, you should not be a burden on the taxpayer. I live in Colorado. We've legalized marijuana and the city and state has not burned to the ground. Clearly, people are able to make their own decisions and be productive people of society, no matter what they're doing in their free time, away from everybody, hurting no one.
Gotcha. Hey, Ryan, so just to add additional question on that, and anyone can jump in after as well. When we say drugs, because I'm pretty sure everyone is in agreement, right? Like marijuana legal, cool. Are we talking like heroin, crack,
Everything.
like whatever, everything? Okay, cool.
We are.
Okay.
Oh, God.
Okay.
Yeah, all drugs.
Okay. So, why do you think that people try to police super, like I said, less commonly used drugs in the first place? What was the thought process for that, and why do you think that it would be better for that not to be policed, besides the reasons you listed?
The entire war on drugs was actually created during the Nixon, right after the Nixon era. I think it's no coincidence that minorities and people who are in oppressed situations just got a lot of civil rights, and then suddenly we come around with the war on drugs that just so happen to target minorities and different people. That's not a coincidence, and we've seen policy after policy after policy that continues to put more Black people behind bars, more Hispanics behind bars, and we don't have a drug problem. We have a prohibition problem, just like in during alcohol prohibition. That is a drug too. It's made of, I believe, ethanol, if I remember correctly. It's not about, in a free country, it's not about stopping a person from doing something else unless they're going to hurt another person or infringe on another person's property rights to life, or their right to liberty, which is their autonomy and self-ownership. So to get in the way and prohibit that is to say, well, you don't know how to make your own decisions, so we're going to let the government do it for you.
Does that extend to alcohol use as well? Should that be policed and governed the same way that it has been? Anybody?
I don't think it should be policed at all. Like, we're adults who can make informed decisions. And for children, like, your parents are responsible for the things that you do. And I think we should be focusing on the education. And this is what's going to happen if you drink too much. And this is what's going to happen if you do heroin. And these are the systems you have in place. And if you want to operate your life like that and be a burden, you're not going to be a burden on the taxpayer. You're going to be a burden to your family or whoever wants to support you. And if no one wants to support you, you're going to starve to death, or you're going to kick your habit and move on with your life. But for people who are suffering with drug addictions, don't you think they'd be more likely to come for help if they didn't fear being put in jail and they thought they could actually get the help that they needed without feeling judged or persecuted?
Right. So the only thing with that, right? So a lot of times when people do abuse drugs or do abuse alcohol, I do feel like sometimes it does infringe on other people. So for example, a lot of, let's say, automobile accidents or a lot of excuses for people, destructive nature, has been allocated to misuse of drugs and other substances. So what would happen in situations where that did happen, where it was infringing upon someone else's right to have their property and have their space and have their safety? Michael, can you answer that? Or anyone, doesn't really matter.
I was just gonna say that. Okay, thank you. I was just gonna say, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. ADHD. Go ahead, Sarah.
Anybody
you were going to say something. Go ahead. If not, I do want to follow up after Mike goes ahead.
Mike, go ahead.
Who's going to take it?
I mean, how I look at it is, yeah, we have, basic personal responsibility. That's how I look at it. If you're a responsible adult, you can responsibly go to work and responsibly have a beer or whatever and be responsible about it and give it to your kids without having Uncle Sam freaking one taxing the heck out of you, and two, just taking it home and having a home. And if you do disrupt somebody else's life by getting into a car accident, yes, then there should be, because you're affecting somebody else's life. Liberty, pursuit of happiness. If you hurt somebody because you're an alcoholic grade, you punch somebody, now affecting their life and their liberty. So when it affects those things, I think that's when there should be laws against it. Having laws saying you can't do marijuana because somebody besides Budweiser makes it, then there should be a law. It should be open to everybody.
And then I'm gonna hold on to this topic because this is going to lead into a bigger question. So I'm holding on to all these answers, and we're going to move on, and then I'll bring up an umbrella of thoughts together based on some of the foundations of the Libertarian Party. But go ahead, James. What was your train of thought?
Yeah, well, there's an overarching theme in libertarianism, which is you don't hurt somebody and they don't hurt you. You own your body, you own your life, you own your freedom, and everyone has that bubble. And until you poke that bubble, you're free to do what you want. So if you want to be a dumbass and do heroin and get hooked on it and do your thing, like Sarah Brooke was saying, that is on you. You have to take responsibility for your actions. Now, let me address, because everyone, when you say, oh, legalize drugs, what are you talking about? It sounds insane. Don't you know? Everyone knows somebody that has either been on drugs or has overdosed. That's a huge epidemic. And so everybody's like, no, we can't legalize it because this. If you legalize something, it doesn't mean you endorse it. If you legalize something, it just means that it's not the government's business to put somebody in a cage for doing something you don't want them to do. That's essentially what you're saying. You're saying, I would like the government to point their guns at this person because they are on drugs and I don't like drugs. And I want them to be in a cage for a certain amount of years until they learn their lesson. That is not, I don't think that's how a civilized society should interact. Not to mention that 44% of the prison population is due to nonviolent drug offenses. They're in jail for not hurting anyone. They're in jail for potentially just hurting themselves. Police resources are being used to put these people in jails, and then taxpayers are paying for it one way or another. So that's the second point. I'm sure we'll get into this a little bit further. Last point. Is it actually safer or more dangerous when drugs are legal or illegal? So deaths, according to the drug war, are going to be, they're the Breonna Taylors. They're the people that get busted in for potentially having weed. You know what I mean? So those people are the consequences of the drug war, and we see that repeatedly. Secondly, Portugal, a first world country, decriminalized all drugs, including heroin. It was estimated in 2001 that 1% of their population was hooked on heroin. That is insane. Their medical system was overwhelmed. So it just sounded like a crazy thing to do, to legalize everything. What they did, they legalized everything. Heroin use plummeted, especially in young people. Drugs across the board plummeted. Their prison population plummeted by 24% within 4 years. Their overall crime rate plummeted and cut in half. And they have since reduced their hepatitis C and their HIV infections were like 100 and something per 100,000. And they dropped to 4 per 100,000 by 2016. Legalization works. It's better for the people. People seek help. It's better for the community. It costs less. And you treat people like human beings.
Gotcha. Right. So I got you. So this all sounds good. Basically, all drugs should be free. Do what you do. You're a responsible adult. And let me ask this final question. If someone is suffering from drug or alcohol abuse and they have harmed other people and they have, put the lives of other people in danger, are you guys fine with the government having programs that help them recover from abuse, or would you rather them figure that out on their own?
Well, I don't see why the government needs to be responsible for their rehab at all. I think we've seen government systems try and fail to help people, especially when like taxpayers should not be on the hook for your treatment when you made a choice. That being said, if you hurt somebody, then you should go to jail and do your time because you cannot infringe on someone else's rights. But a bigger issue is like when people get hooked on drugs, a lot of it is because they're trying to escape a reality that's not very pleasant when they're sober. So we should be investing in mental health and making sure that people understand their emotions and how to properly interpret those in a healthy way so that they don't have to turn to substances.
Gotcha. All right.
Amen.
So
that is a fact.
all right, good job.
I think I
Go
just want to add.
Go ahead, Ryan.
I just wanted to add really quick. You know, essentially what Sarah Brooke is saying is the solution to this problem is education.
Absolutely.
And providing and mostly information more than it is education. It is you making informed decisions. And you're going to see that theme throughout tonight is all about informed, consensual decisions. That's a common theme in libertarianism.
Gotcha. All right. So I'm going to move down a little bit on the thing. I'm going to briefly talk for at least 3 of you. I don't know. And then Michael, I'll give you the floor for this one. So James, you switched from more conservative to Republican because you felt like there were a lot of things that you kind of didn't agree with. Sarah Brown, you just said that you felt you switched from Democrat to Libertarian because of impunity on drugs and other things that would help the Black community. Ryan, we talked a little bit. You said something about what in fact did you switch from being more Democrat to Libertarian? And then I'll get you Mike, because I believe you switched from conservative to Libertarian.
Yeah, I was definitely Democratic mostly because I'm gay and my husband and I we want to be free to do what we want. There's a common joke in, I want the gays to be able to protect their marijuana crops with guns. It's something like that. I might have that a little off, but at the end of the day, I switched because I started asking questions. I started saying, why have we gone decades of these policies and we've made little progress? We've made progress, but at the end of the day, it is people of religious nature or that want to force, it doesn't even have to be religious, to say that, you have to act this way, you have to be this way. So they come in and they try to help. I'm sorry, I'm having some audio issues.
Yeah, I was like, what's going on? Good.
They come in and they try to help by saying, well, we're gonna make it illegal. So essentially what I'm trying to say, because I'm just all over the place, is when you come in and you tell people how they need to live or act or be or whatever, of course you need federal protections or you need government to come in and say, no, we have to be fair about this still. So what you're asking is for the government to be fair in how it mistreats people.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
And so I started asking those kinds of questions and started really looking at it from a different way. I don't believe everybody's out to get us. I just believe that a lot of people didn't understand. They still don't understand. And if ignorance is bliss, but it is also a curse at the same time, because you are going to make uninformed decisions. And that I'm going off on a tangent about that, but ultimately switching was because I started looking and asking different questions.
Gotcha. So on this will be after Mike. This will lead to our next question. So just to wrap up, just to generalize what you said, you basically felt that if there wasn't like a tug on either side to infringe or restrict, and there was just everyone was free, there was no government rule whatsoever, gay people would have less to worry about.
Well, they say guns are the great equalizer, and I firmly believe that, because at the end of the day, if everybody is able to protect their own property, life, and liberty for themselves, they don't need some entity to do that for them.
Okay. All right. So Mike, I know a little bit about you, but go ahead and let the people know. How did you become a libertarian?
I became a libertarian after a couple of years ago when the ATF, Trump was supposed to be this great, member of the Second Amendment, community, take care of us. And then what really opened my eyes is when the ATF banned bump stocks and made people felons overnight, without even going through Congress and the whole system we had in place. It was, hey, make that go away. And they made it go away. And there was no way we can go back on doing it. I kind of like, that's not really how he, it's supposed to be follow the Constitution, and I say, and I'm a big constitutionalist. And if one rule, when President Obama was president, people would say, hey, you can't write a decree. That's, that's a dictator. But then when their guy does it, it's, oh, okay. I think it's the same rule as the Constitution. And just seeing those, that mix of, this is okay for our guy to do it, but not okay for your guy to do it. Like, no, the Constitution is your ruler. You measure everything up to that ruler, and if it doesn't go by that ruler, then it's wrong.
Gotcha.
So, and just seeing the hypocrisy of both parties. That's why I became a libertarian. And there was that, the deficit. We're supposed to get rid of the deficit, and this year I think we made Obama's deficit. We owe President Obama an apology.
Yeah, it's much worse. It's much worse.
That's
facts.
All
right, so this is my next question. So this will be funny. Between Biden and Trump, who are the two likely people to become the president at this time, hopefully one day in the future, it could be a libertarian, it could be a Green Party, it could be an independent, but right now it's a higher chance that it could be Biden or Trump. What America would you rather see? So, for example, if someone was to ask me, who would you rather have president, Candace Owens or Donald Trump? I'd say Donald Trump. If someone said, who would you rather have president as Kanye West or Trump? I'd say Donald Trump. And someone asked me, who would I rather see between Biden and Trump? I would say Biden. So I want everyone to give an answer. What American, then we'll move on to our next one. So whoever, go ahead, someone jump in.
That's such a loaded question because they both suck. And again, I know you know this. I know you know this. Everyone kind of agrees. But how did we get here, right? It's like they both suck. Everyone knows they both suck. Why are there only two choices? But anyway, so I will try to cut to the chase. It's hard for me to pick one. I think there are pros and cons of each one. I think the Republicans pretend to be against the deficit when a Democrat president is in power, and then the Democrats pretend to be anti-war when there's a Republican president in power, except not really with Trump. I don't know. So there's definitely pros and cons. I think it's kind of like the devil you know versus the devil you don't know. And this is kind of what happened in 2016. Everybody voted for Trump because everybody knew, they saw Hillary. She'd been in power for a very, very long time. Everyone knew what they were getting, but they wanted something a little bit different. So they kind of went with Trump. It's hard to say gun to my head. Maybe Trump, I don't know, but that's a terrible, I don't want to make that decision. I would never, ever, I would rather not vote, honestly. I can't do it.
Okay, I got you. So how about this? Think about it. I want that answer because I gave y'all answers. That's fair.
I would vote Donald Trump hands down. Hands down, Donald Trump. Because I would rather know for a fact that someone was against me and someone was working to hold people that look like me back than vote for someone who says he's my friend and then turns around and stabs me in the back. And that's exactly what's happened in the policies he's passed. That's exactly what he did when he nominated Kamala Harris, who has put 20 million more blacks in prison than whites. And you can't deny the numbers. And I'm looking at the facts in my face, and you're telling me that just overlook that because Trump said a couple racist things. Well, Biden's done a couple racist things. So if I had to pick, I'd rather know for a fact someone was my enemy than find out years later when it was too late.
Gotcha. I love that answer. All right. So
when you have more than 43% in 2016 or 43% of registered voters in 2016 who did not vote, you have a problem with the candidates you're putting up.
Absolutely.
I agree. Y'all. Hey, look. Both of them are trash. I will be the first one.
What I'm saying is the question. The question is almost an oxymoron in and of itself, because you can't answer it without sacrificing a part of something you believe in.
So true.
So at the end of the day, you now as an American have to say, if I'm going to vote. So the answer is I wouldn't vote in the presidency. I would put no preference or just not fill out, but I would vote for every other capable person down that ballot, because that is where the real power lies, is in the down ballot stuff.
So I disagree with that, and I'm gonna get you real quick, Mike.
Right.
I disagree with that. Only really reason why is because I'm let you guys know I'm a hardline progressive. I'm not so much on the taxing thing that a lot of progressives are fine with. I am more so with you guys. Please stop taxing us. Like, let us keep our money. I'm getting taxed out the ass. It doesn't seem like it's ever getting better, no matter how much more money you make. But I'm typically a progressive, so I am for gay, as you are, guys. Gay rights protections. I am, I'm very inclusive. Pro-immigration, and this year I've seen one person with the backing of his party dismantle a lot of things that I felt were really important. So, for example, DACA, that was messed with. That's in the courts again right now. Trans people going to the military, they're no longer able to be in the military right now. And the Supreme Court is overwhelmingly conservative. So I'm worried about gay marriage being respected and upheld. So I do feel like Donald Trump, as one person, was able to influence all of those things. So I do think that it's not just local. I feel like this election should say one person can make a huge difference. I even would say Obama. Like, people say he doesn't do anything or whatever. I feel like Obama got Trump. Like, the people that were like, I hate Obama, I hate what's going on, if it's his race or whatever it is, they got a coalition together and they got Donald Trump in. I don't know if we would have ever gotten a Donald Trump if we didn't have Obama previously to that. Michael, what you like you to? I already know, but let the folks know. What would you rather see between the two likely candidates?
Just the two. I would have picked Tulsi Gabbard, but Democrats didn't do that.
Yes.
No, I would pick Trump over Biden, just because Biden has been. I know what I'm going to get with Trump. I've had 4 years with him. I know what I'm going to get. With Biden, he's been so wishy-washy, back and forth on his policies. Fracking, yes, no, maybe so, maybe tomorrow, maybe when this person gives me money. He's been wishy-washy with China. China's our friend. China's not our friend. You don't know what you're getting with him. Trump, I know what I'm getting with. Has really changed his whole thing, except for the gun control thing, but hasn't really changed his ideas mostly. It's just been, you got Trump, and so, but Biden, I really don't know what you're going to get, what plate of food you're going to get. With Trump, I kind of
gotcha. So let me go to our next question, and then we're going to go into our big tough topic question. So the next one would be, I'm getting feedback. Hold on a second. Blah, blah. All right, it's good. I heard Tulsi Gabbard more than one time. So was there any candidate or nominee, well, not really candidate, a nominee from either party that you guys see, including the conservatives? I heard I was messaged by someone's name is Christian Rocha, and he really liked Ben Carson. Was there any nominees that you guys seen from either party or other parties that you guys would have rather seen the nominee and would have voted for if they were a part of either major platform? So I heard Tulsi Gabbard quite a bit. My homeboy Eric told me Tulsi Gabbard. So
all day, Tulsi.
I love Tulsi.
Okay, so he told me, and I need to know if there's any other reason. Ryan, you're Tulsi too as well, right?
Yeah, I like Tulsi, and while I didn't agree with all of his policies, I did like the way Mayor Pete approached politics.
Gotcha. Awesome. So my homeboy told me that it was because she was anti-war, and that's not something that they feel like he feels like Democrats are typically are. So was there any other additional things that got you guys really excited about Tulsi Gabbard? Anybody?
I liked her tenacity. I liked the way she would tackle issues head on instead of dancing around something to save face. She was very consistent in her views. I knew what I was going to get with her. She's approachable. She's honest. And I just, when I vote for her, felt like she was someone that could represent the community I was a part of instead of the elite ruling over the peasants.
Gotcha. Understanding that Tulsi would have been a Democrat and she would have definitely governed in a way that is not as liberty and as free as a
I
libertarian.
was a Democrat.
Oh yeah, so you were, and so was Ryan.
I was
But
with
Michael,
it.
but hold on, but Michael was not, and James was not. So, would you guys been okay with there being government influential policies on top of the things that Goldie Gabbert represented?
Yeah, so Tulsi is not like Ryan said, she wasn't 100% agreement with, but war is a huge thing. Like not killing people is pretty big, right? Second, she was actually pretty good on decriminalization, at least of marijuana, and that's a start. Third, she was pro freeing whistleblowers and letting. She had specific plans to let specific whistleblowers out of jail. Whistleblowers have been prosecuted by Obama and Trump together. They weren't getting out of jail. Anybody that like exposed the corruption in the government, they're in jail. And she was actually going to let them out. And she approached it from a really honest. You can just tell when people are honest versus when they're lying. Like Sarah Brooke was saying, she's approachable when she's honest. So those things really got me. I'm like, hey, that's good enough. I'll take that. War, keeping transparency and letting whistleblowers out, and drug decriminalization.
All right, last question, and then we'll move on to the next one. How did y'all feel about Andrew Yang? Because that was my guy. Y'all can say y'all hated his guts. I thought he was really good.
He understood.
Go ahead, right.
He understood most of the problem, but his solution was more idealistic than people think libertarianism is.
Yeah. Okay, so he's talking about the $1,000 a month. He explained it. He said that you would use automation.
He's just saying he'll give us our taxes back. Essentially, libertarians are saying, give us our income tax back. I mean, all taxes, but we'll settle for income first.
Gotcha. But hey, he's essentially giving you your taxes back, right? But that's better than just people taking and not doing anything with it. So it's better. It's one step in the right direction. Oh,
it is.
I don't know who that is. Okay, it's gone. I don't know what's going on with that. Sorry, y'all. Perfect. So I mean, I get that. I get it's like a huge holy shit, this is a very unusual thing that a politician would want, but it is definitely a better solution than what's going on right now, where they're just raping your checks and taking your tax money and going to golf courses on it and flying around the world and building walls and funding the military and all that stuff.
I think, kind of piggybacking off your last question about Biden and Trump, I would add that we have been heading for decades in the wrong direction. We've been heading towards authoritarianism, where we are using government more and more to restrict people and change their rights or give rights or all of this. At the end of the day, the government needs to stay out of things other than protecting citizens from each other. That's about it.
All right, so let's go over this one briefly. Ryan, I'll stay with you. What is a libertarian in 3 words or less? How would you describe it?
Individual, liberty-focused, inquisitive. All
right, James?
Well, it just so happens that libertarianism is based on 3 words itself, the non-aggression principle. It just means don't hurt each other, don't take our stuff, respect each other's freedom. And so the non-aggression principle, if you get into libertarian circles, that's what most everything is based off of.
All right, Sarah Brooke? Oh, you're muted. Perfect.
My bad, guys.
Yeah.
Simply put, I'd say a libertarian is a freedom-loving American, is someone who enjoys their freedom and enjoys taking care of their community, but also can stand up for themselves and make their own decisions.
Perfect. All right, and then Michael, and then we're going to start getting some hardball questions here.
All right. Libertarian, in my 2 words, would be self-responsibility, liberty, and the Constitution.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to go down these bulletin points for you. So, is a woke Republican an accurate term?
No. What is that?
So basically,
can you define that word? Can I use it?
Yeah. So I'm telling you, this is a conversation I had with with.
Is that based in Greek? What is that?
So basically, it would say that you are non-racist conservatives. That's what that basically means. So
you're a decent human being.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, we are pretty decent human beings,
then you're not woke, are you?
Yeah,
Because
so I guess that would be
still rising. They're banning our guns. So, like, what are you woke on?
yeah,
You like
so,
black people? Good for you.
So I would say overall very tolerant and but conservative. So is that,
I want to take this a little bit.
go ahead.
Okay, so there's this common misconception that libertarians are, and we're actually guilty of this. Some of our past candidates have said we're like, kind of socially a little bit liberal and kind of fiscally a little bit conservative, and we're not a grab bag of Democrats and Republicans. We don't just pick different ideas from them. We're a consistent philosophy of self. You own yourself. You're free to do what you want, and everything, until you hurt somebody else or hit somebody's property or anything like that. You're free to do all of that stuff and take responsibility for it. And everything that comes from that is libertarianism.
Perfect. All right. So here we go, y'all. All right. So this will lead us into our next topic real quick. I asked a buddy of mine who was essentially trashing the Libertarian Party on one of my Facebook posts. So I will read this down to you guys, and I want to take this apart bits by bits because, like I said, I would like to paint a bigger picture of the viewpoints for and against the Libertarian Party, so that way we can get some of the misconceptions out the way and be able to provide concrete answers. And I think you guys are all very capable of doing that. So I will read to you verbatim what our conversation said. So I said, so I'm doing a libertarian informative podcast. Can you give me your reasons for disliking the party so I can get good feel about the reasons? He said, yeah, sure. The Libertarian Party is unfettered capitalism, meaning they're decent on social issues, but don't have a desire to help citizens economically. Additionally, most Black Americans have been systematically shut out of systems of capital, home ownership, business loans, etc. So a libertarian agenda automatically keeps Black Americans in a lower case system. He's a progressive, so we need a progressive agenda that ensures a standard living for all Americans. The Libertarian Party is also currently anti-science, or at least doesn't value health over profits. They want business to fully open and don't believe in public health mandates like wearing masks. They also will value profits over things like governmental regulations, public health, Ponzi schemes, etc., etc. The Libertarian agenda is better or worse, you're on your own. And in my opinion, it's government's job to do better than nothing. So let's touch on that subject right there. Anybody would like to?
That's a lot to
I'd first
unpack.
like for him to cite his sources because I don't agree with any of that. Like what?
I get that. So that's why we're having this podcast, because
so let's refute that.
Okay, so
what was his first statement?
Okay, so the first statement would be the Libertarian Party is unfettered capitalism.
Yes. Good.
Okay, agree.
Sort of.
Interestingly enough, though, the history of the word capitalism was actually a derogatory term used by communists and socialists to make free marketeers look stupid. Just FYI. But then, we sort of took that term and kind of owned it. But essentially, it's a free market, or a free, individuals, transacting and interacting with each other without a third party like the government or somebody using violence in the middle of that transaction. So we're not okay with violence in the middle of peaceful transactions.
Gotcha. All right. So mostly the generalization is, and it's not as offensive, but more so it does describe the perspective there. So let's touch on this one, and I would like to spend a little bit of time on this one. When it comes to Black Americans being shut out of systems of capital and keeping Black Americans back, I do want to touch on that one quite a bit. So that this will be probably a bit more of a lengthy part of the podcast. So I'm going to switch to the Black America and Black economics section that I have. With the understanding that Black capital, well, let me not even read off this. Let me just talk to you straight. Right now, there's a lot of conversations about using the government to improve the state of Black capital, Black wealth. We have Ice Cube with his Black America document. Both candidates are talking about plans to improve things with Black people economically. On the flip side, I feel like the Libertarian Party is saying that they do not want government involvement in trade or business or economics at all. So what would you say to a person that is feeling that way and doesn't feel that the Libertarian Party represents them if they're Black, and they think that libertarian values would hold back their success?
I'd like to remind them that the government got them to this point in the first place. Like, we've had regulations and Black people are still shut out of the market. And it's not just Black people, it's anybody who wants to start a business. Because how can you expect someone to want to open up a restaurant when they have to buy a building and they have to buy food and they have to buy inventory and chairs and decor and then also pay $30,000 in licensing? It's ridiculous. And how do you expect anyone to move up out of poverty if they cannot start their own business? And who's in poverty more than anybody if it's not the Black community? And you're actively holding them back by putting these barriers in the way that they have to overcome, that they start out not socially inept to overcome these obstacles. And that's why when you look at a Black person, you see them successful, it's because they're in music, or it's because they're in sports, or they're an actor. It's not because they started a business or went to school, because the government has put policies in place to actively hold us back from that. What I want is for the government to recognize that we are able-bodied people capable of helping ourselves. We don't need the government. They've done nothing for us because they owned us and then they freed us. And it's not like they freed us and then everything was hunky-dory, because they freed us and then abused us. And then now they just section us off with Section 8 housing and they keep us in poverty so that we can never move out. So I don't see how more government intervention would help us move out of this predicament that we're in when the government put us here in the first place.
So let's go with that, right?
Amen. Holy shit. That
was
God damn.
Way better than I was going to do.
Okay, so let's go with that, right? Let's go with that, right? Let's say we get every libertarian perspective in office when it comes to business and trade. How, let's say the poorest of a Black person you can think, like a person that is only used to working at McDonald's, how can they expect to achieve economic success?
I think they should explore their passions and start a business. I think there's no reason that someone cannot be a productive member of society and move on and innovate something that they're passionate about. But we will not encourage the Black community to show their interest in mathematics and show their interest in poetry and show their interest in pottery. So how can we expect anyone that's working at McDonald's that maybe really likes robotics, but because they like robotics, they're being bullied by their Black community and they'll never pursue it? I think there needs to be a change in the way we treat each other before that we can rely on the government to do anything.
Okay, so this is where this is going to go into a center point eventually. Okay, I get that. I just don't see, because there's a lack of education. There's a lack of access to opportunity. Why is there a
lack of education? It's because
I think it's a culture thing too. I think a culture helps. Absolutely,
the culture helps.
Yeah,
so
because
are we living in communities with the best funded schools?
No, most of the time.
No, we are not. And why? It's because the government puts us in Section 8 housing in the worst area with the worst fund schools. So maybe if we don't rely on the government to house us, because remember, plantation owners housed us too, and they didn't put us in the best area. They didn't put us with the best food. And then we suffered because of it. And we're still suffering. And for some reason, we're accepting it as like, well, it's always been like this. But baby, it doesn't have to be.
So let's go with that, right? The government takes away everything. You have nothing.
Love it.
How do you get it? Like, how do you, I mean, you would have to have a whole system.
You got a whole lot of grit and tenacity. And I see that in the young brothers and sisters that we have in this community right now. And if you stop holding them back and telling them that they talk white or whatever, they're going to pursue their passions and they're going to start businesses. They're going to inspire others. They're going to be successful. Need I remind you that before we were slaves, we were kings and queens. Like, we had entire libraries that the Romans came and invaded, and we've lost our passion and will because the government treated us like property, and we just accepted that as the norm. We are smart, able-bodied people with diverse passions and great ideas. And if you got out of our way and stopped holding each other back, I see no reason that we can't have such an amazing, like, this mentality should be a thing of the past. It's been years. It's been generations, and it's in the spirit of familiarity that we still treat each other like this.
Right. So let's go with that. Right. So I agree with you. And this is I'm going to go ahead and bring it to the center point. It feels like to me the Libertarian Party has a lot of faith in people, like a lot of faith in people.
Why don't you have faith in people?
Because in scenarios where people could do the right thing, a lot of times they choose not to. So we're relying, like, I mean, let me just go with Congress. Like, they know that America is suffering with.
Yeah, but like.
That's the state. Those are the people we want to.
Why I could make
if the government fails,
not helping people, or I could make pennies and do the right thing. Like, people are naturally selfish. They're not naturally evil.
Right. So let me go with this is going to take us to another situation. So we might as well cross over. So I have lost a lot of faith in people personally. And this is going to go into Black crime. This year alone, a very close friend of mine's eventually passed away from being shot 8 years ago. He's been paralyzed from the head down. Innocent person, never was involved.
Sorry to hear that.
Thank you. And never was involved in any kind of gun ownership, gang violence, drugs. Got finished graduating from school. Barely left the house. Was shot and eventually died this year. His brother was gunned down 6 months later. They are the only two sons of the mother who I know and love and respect. Shot in the same way that Pop Smoke was shot in February, like from far away. I'm like reading stories about 12-year-old kids with guns that are shooting 1-year-olds. In Baltimore City, there was a bus driver dispute where they got into it and the passenger shot the bus driver in the face. There was another incident this week where a person was waiting outside. My homegirl calls me and tells me that same person was laying on the ground with a hole in their head. So I think having faith, like, there's also child rapists. There's also people that are so financially greedy that they will put the well-being of other people in jeopardy in order to be able to benefit themselves. I feel like that's how slavery happened in the first place. And these are people that have the ability to do the right thing, and they haven't been. This is not a government thing. So this goes back to my point of a lot of the libertarian perspectives does rely on people doing the right and fair thing. And government does try to step in place to say, hey, you should do the right thing. And if you don't do the right thing, these are the consequences. But that's just one thing. With the libertarian perspective, it's like we're taking that government away and we're really relying on this system to work based on people caring and loving and wanting everyone to prosper and do the right thing. And then those people that don't do the right thing we'll try to isolate ourselves from them. Eventually, we hope that they will. So am I wrong to suggest that relying on people to do the right thing is not realistic?
I think you are right.
I think in a way, I think you're right and wrong. I think you're right in the current system we have. I think everything you mentioned was a human problem.
Right.
It was a problem with the way the system has treated people. It is the problem with the inability for prosperity. Is the problem the people or the tools?
I think it could be a combination.
That's my question.
I think it could be a combination of
both. But I could take anything and use it with violence.
Mm-hmm.
I can take anything and do that. Guns themselves are just a tool. I'm not saying that, and yes, education, and that's really important. We need to practice safe gun ownership. I don't think a single libertarian would disagree with me on that. It's about personal responsibility. So those cases where kids are getting a hold of gun, that's a problem with the parent.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
not the lack of education.
Right. So we're relying on all parents, because I'm like looking at this, and if you guys want to look at the story, it's a kid named Little Rodney. Shot a 1-year-old child. They put him away for 7 years now in juvenile detention center. That I just looked in the story yesterday. On Instagram Live, I don't know how different type of looking gun every single video that I've seen him with, and this goes into the gun conversation I'd like to have.
I think that's a mental health issue though, because like how many people own guns and don't shoot children in the street? So
Right.
like these issues are not happening in a vacuum. There were steps that led to that point, and that's what we have to annihilate. Okay, so we can't just like say, okay, run rampant, do whatever you want. Like there is a real issue in the way that we are interacting and treating each other. There's no longer, we are all Americans. There's you're over there and I'm over here, and don't cross that fucking line. And that's not how this world works. We are naturally social creatures as humans. We have a natural instinctive drive to want to be a part of a community. But when that community is not serving us, we don't feel a part of it. So why would we respect the rules around us? There needs to be an overhaul in the way we view the world. And that starts with education. That starts with teachers recognizing that the quiet kid in the back is being harassed, and you need to stop your class and address that situation so that he never gets the idea of fuck these kids, I'm shooting up this school.
Yeah, so let me I do want to get Mike in here real quick, but I need to respond to that real quick. So I'm hearing a little bit of two things now. I'm hearing live free, do the right thing, have the system in place to do the right thing, and people will. But to the suggestions you made were less free. They're like suggesting that you make sure people are doing education, make sure the mother is doing the right thing when they can choose not to.
I don't have to make sure anyone's doing anything. Like it's human nature. I know my mom never taught me that I should not kill somebody. She never said that to me, but I just know in my heart that I shouldn't do that. But like when people get to that point, they've been pushed past the breaking point of human nature to want to take someone else's life. Clearly, there are steps in place where they are harming others and they're being harmed and no one is stepping up for them. And we have to defend the people who are being harmed before they get to the point where they want to harm other people. Right. Because so libertarian principles is do what you want, but don't hurt anybody. But if you're doing what you want and you're in the back of the class harassing the quiet kid, you're hurting somebody.
Right. I get that.
We aren't teaching. I just want to add really quick. We aren't teaching respect and kindness. That is the main problem there. We are not teaching people how to be respectful. When she says stop that kid in the class, she's saying that teacher needs to step in, just as the parent should step in and say, no, little Johnny, you need to respect little Susie.
But what how would you need to teach? How would those things be enforced? Because, like I said, because
it's human nature. When I see someone being pushed over, I'm going to go help them because in my heart, not because my mommy told me to, but I saw someone being harmed in my community, and as a person and a member of this community, I'm going to stand up for my members. So it's in your nature to want to help somebody, unless you are taught that this person is not with you and it's okay to bully them.
Right. So let me go with that, and then I want to go ahead and get some of these gun questions because I really want to get really good deep dive in this conversation. So let's say you're the mother of little Rodney who shot the 1-year-old kid, and you're like, you're not raising your child right. I'm looking at you. The things that you're doing are leading him down a destructive path, and she tells you, mind your motherfucking business. This is my son, and I will raise him however I feel like I want to raise him.
But after that, it's too late. He's already harmed somebody. So if you said, hey, look at this kid, he's going to shoot someone, that's when we educate ourselves and we don't, especially in the Black community, this is such an epidemic. We will not address mental health issues. We pretend they don't exist when clearly they do. To shoot a 1-year-old child is a mental defect. That is not in our nature. So he needed to be evaluated, whether it was in school and he was fighting kids, it was the responsibility of the school he was going to send him to counseling. And a mother needs to be educated. It is not normal for your kid to act this way. And no matter what she's going through, maybe she has to work too many jobs because the government's taking too much taxes out of her check to support herself. And then maybe she'll be able to be at home and show her kids what's going on.
Gotcha. All right. So I'm getting like a bunch of pings. Like, let's get Mike in here. So Mike, I'm gonna give you a bunch of hardball questions, but I know everyone is in agreement with Sarah Brook, and I love your answers and everything. So Mike, I will give you a chance to answer this question that I have as a follow-up for that, and then I have specific gun issues that I need to ask you. She's saying that you see that there's a mental issue and you need to do certain things in order to be able to address those mental issues. What thing in place is going to actually make sure that happens if it's not the government? What would be responsible for making sure that we are trying to prevent people from doing the things that we're mentioning earlier? So like if it's not the government, then who would be responsible?
It would be your community. It would be your either your family or your, back in the 1800s, you hear a whole lot of mass shooting, but there were big family units. You had grandma, grandpa, and uncle all in the same area. You had, your dad's best friend from like the Civil War. He was in the same area. Everybody just grew up together. So you had that whole cluster. They would keep an eye on each other and say, "Hey, your son's being, doing something weird. You got to take a look at it." I think, and we kind of lost that. We've lost
Gotcha.
that. How would you don't even know who our neighbors
How would you?
So it's hard to keep.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Whenever we talk at the same time, it jambles up. So let's put this topic on ice, because I feel like we will probably go back and forth in circles. Because what I'm trying to get to is that relies on people doing and wanting to do the right thing, and when they don't, what is the backup plan? Go ahead, James, and then Mike. I will have my gun questions for you. Let me let you know so you can think about your answer. Should states individually mandate gun policy, or should the federal government mandate a sweeping gun access policy? Go ahead, James, and then that will be my question for you, Mike, so we can go to the next topic.
I really want to hit on schools, though. This is really important. All right. So you're asking. So a lot of it, we're existing in this framework where it's difficult to see what would happen if the government wasn't running everything, and we're stuck in this. Your local community has one public school and all this other stuff. Let me ask you a question. If you heard on the news that there was a huge shooting at Walmart on the next town over, would you go to that Walmart? Probably not. If there was also like another shooting, like, 2 miles south of you at, I don't know, Lowe's, right? Would you go to that Walmart or Lowe's? Like, these guys don't take my safety seriously. I'm not going there, right? Sandy Hook, public school. Did those kids go back afterwards? Yes, they did. You know why? Because they don't have an option. If you actually had options and competitions between schools, and there's a school system, like there was this company that was running schools or whatever it was, and they consistently had school shootings. They didn't take the proactive approaches that Sarah Brooke was talking about and educate people with mental health and pre-screen the parents, or, make sure that, I don't know, maybe metal detectors. I don't know exactly what it would look like. But if somebody's doing a bad job in the market, guess what? They go out of business because they suck at their job and they shouldn't be doing it. Guess what happens when government messes up? They get more money because they're saying, hey, we didn't have the resources. And so it's more and more and more money, and they get more and more and more inept. And parents and students do not have options. And so you're sending your kids to schools to get shot up. And that's just irresponsible, in my opinion. So to not have options is irresponsible. And guess what? You don't have to just hope people do the right thing. There's an incentive for people to do the right thing. You don't just have to hope and trust and believe. I have that as a belief, but I also know there are some bad people out there. How do I incentivize people to not be bad, and then for good people to proactively make sure that bad people stay away from my kids? That's how it's the competition between schools.
Gotcha.
You make the good part. I just want to add on that. You make the good path the easy path.
Yes.
That's what we're getting at. Is right now the good path is the hard path. That's the hard. That's we need to start moving it towards the good path. Obviously, we're not going to get there overnight, and obviously, it's going to take us a long time to get there to where we really want to be. But to say, well, we're not going to be able to get there all the way, so we're not even going to try to go in that direction. That's essentially what people say when they tell us we can't vote this way.
Gotcha. All right, so Mike, 101 gun issues. All right, so let me start with this question. Just to piggyback off what James said about the Walmart shootings and Sandy Hook and stuff. What would you say to a person that would say, wouldn't it just be easier if there were less guns? You wouldn't have to worry about gun violence in schools if the access to guns was a lot challenging or a lot more restrictive to get. What would you say to a person that had that argument? So let's say they said if the shooter had a hard time finding the gun, then those kids wouldn't have got shot up. What would you say to that?
I would say that's kind of a fallacy. There's plenty of examples where people can get guns pretty easily. Actually, there's actually documentaries on how guns are manufactured in Turkey and the Philippines, and they look just like copies of stuff we have here that are legally bought every day, and they come over here and they're worth lots of money. The whole idea of guns being the thing is, everyone wants to blame the gun, and I get tired of it. It's not the gun's fault. Gun's a tool. Like I've been saying, a gun's a tool.
Mm.
I mean, did you hear about what happened in Paris yesterday? A guy got beheaded and 2 people got killed by a knife. So it's just a tool. I mean, the person's still wrong. We're not blaming the wrong person. We're blaming the tool. I mean,
Right. So this will be my response to that. Ugh, like, let me. I'm gonna say, ping, mute yourself real quick. So, the knife, the bombs. Because I just read a thing about the bombs. Bombs are not as easy to make, and knives have a secondary purpose to whatever. They have multiple purposes. One would
So
say
do guns. Like you could hunt with guns.
Yeah, well, I was having a conversation with Noah Corin, who is also a libertarian, and he recommended Ryan for the podcast. He made the point that they're used for funerals, like, and respect the military and stuff of that nature. But everyone's understanding, even when you're hunting, is that a gun is, when it's fired, is at a person or at an animal. Its intention is to harm. So people would say that there's not really secondary uses for it comparative to a knife, a car, a bomb. Well, a bomb is of course to hurt someone, but people would say that would be harder to
I would argue there's one you're missing. It's there to protect.
Well,
it's there to protect, like any tool.
Right, exactly. So
if you don't consider that a valuable reason to protect your life, your liberty, your property, your self-ownership, the things that give you self-autonomy and freedom, basically, in this country, then what is the point of protecting anything after that? Exactly.
So one would say then there would be no need to protect yourself with a gun if that person ain't have a gun too. So what's your response?
No, but see, that's why there's this race against nuclear weapons, because once everyone has a nuclear weapon, no one has a nuclear weapon. And the more nuclear weapons you have, the more control you're able to have. Gotcha. So like if everyone can protect themselves, there's no reason to infringe on someone, because if I have a tank and you have a tank, are we going to blow each other up? Now we have to look for a better option.
Gotcha.
Yes.
All right. Can I jump in on this? I actually have some really cool stats. It might be a tiny bit long-winded, but I think everybody will appreciate where I'm going with this. Okay. So guns are a tool. We know, and we see that. So if we focus on deaths by gun, okay, let's hypothetically say we wave a wand, all guns are just gone, right? Does the murder rate change? Statistically, we should look at comparable countries to the United States and look at murder rates prior to and post any kind of serious gun control. So we'll look at the UK, we'll look at Australia, we'll look at Canada, we'll look at Mexico. In those countries, who have all had significant gun control measures, if not outright banning of guns, the murder rate does not change at all. It was lower than the United States before. It was lower than the United States after. But if anything, it stays the same or goes a little bit up. Like the UK went up by 0.5, or it's half a death per 100,000 or something like that. But it never changed. You just saw guns being the cause of death as a lower percentage of the murder rate. You still saw the same exact amount of murders. So what does that mean? That means that the United States, for some reason, there's a lot more people dying, and it is guns, but it's not necessarily because guns exist. They're dying of guns, but the murder rate would probably stay the same because it has in every single country that has enacted gun legislation. So what is different about the United States than other countries like that? We have a significant drug war. Okay, more people. So we went over about half of the people in prison are for drug-related crimes. 42% of the murders are drug-related, as in gangs, gang violence, accidental gang shootings that push drugs. Where do gangs get their money from? From the drug war. So that is the real thing that's driving the murder rate. So 42% of the people murdered, in general in the United States are drug related. If we eliminated the drug war, we could safely say that our homicide rate of 5 to 100,000 would drop to 2.9 for every 100,000, which is actually pretty low compared to all other developed nations that are similar to us. Secondly, The Obama administration put out a document that was put out by the CDC. It was a study done by the CDC estimating how much crime is actually prevented and how much death is actually prevented by gun ownership itself. And it looked at two different metrics. First metric was the more people that had, Sarah Brooks said this, the more people that have guns, it's more of a deterrent as a culture. More people have, it's a chance that more people are armed, so it deters violence. The Obama administration estimated that 3 million crimes are prevented every single year just because we have a ton of guns. In that same report, it put out that 400,000 crimes were actively stopped in the process because of gun ownership or using a firearm defensively. So, and again, so we're looking at Mexico, which has a death rate or a murder rate of anywhere from 15 to 29 per 100,000. Australia is about 1. The UK is about 1.5. Canada is 1.8. And the United States currently is 5.0. But I would argue that's because of the drug war. There's so many deaths related to the drug war. Almost half of all murders are related to the drug war. I think that's the key. And that would get us right back down to the range. And actually guns, according to the CDC and the Obama administration, prevent a significant amount of death and crime in the United States.
Perfect. Hey, we got to go to a commercial. We'll be right back, everyone.
For new customers only. Receive 2 months of club pricing plan free, a $10 value. Get 50% off your digital audiobook purchases, a free premium audiobook, exclusive discounts and offer, and much, much more. Over 80,000 titles to choose from, with special code on our website millennials.us.
All right, cool. So, Sarah Brooks, things missing.
Can I follow up real quick? I have 2 more points. I promise.
Okay.
I was long-winded.
Gotcha.
So on guns, let's look at the UK one more time. So they banned guns, the murder rate stayed the same. So now as a proportion of murders, knives took over. So what are they doing now? They're talking about actually registering or banning knives. There was a member of parliament, Scott Mann, said that it's time we had a national database like we do with guns, where there's a knife registry. No one under the age of 18 can publicly hold or purchase a knife. It's putting the blame on an object and if the death rate's not changing and the tool is, and then you just keep banning the tools, you're not going to ever solve the problem.
So let me follow up with that, and then I want to try to get a little bit more different topics going guns. So this would go back to my point of relying on people to do the right thing. So I know you said that you felt that if drugs were the war on drugs was taken away. I'm not sure what the war on drugs in the UK is like, but the point that you made was they banned guns or had high gun restrictions. So then they started using knives, and then now that they're starting using knives, they're trying to do something about knives. So how do we get people to stop doing all that shit in the first place?
I think if I
You make the easy path a different path.
Kill somebody, and if there's a will, there's a way. So take away the will.
But how do we take away? So what is you're saying relying on people to say, hey, this is not right. Please don't do this.
No, please don't do this.
Is that me? Hold on. Okay, there you go. Go ahead.
I'm not saying please don't do this. I want a human being to never get it in their head, I want to kill somebody. Like in my 22 years of life, I've never wanted to kill somebody. I've come close, but never have done it. So we have to get people before they've reached that point, and we do that by incorporating and normalizing mental health, because to kill somebody is a mental health issue.
Gotcha. All right, cool. So let me go on to you, James. You have one more thing.
Yeah, I was just going to say, libertarians, we're not like utopians. We know that there are bad people out there, but we understand that our goal is to have the lowest amount of death, the lowest amount of crime, the most happiness for people. And we really see that taking away somebody's ability to defend themselves is dangerous. And to touch on how do we get people to stop, poverty is the #1 correlation to violence. More than any other factor. Socioeconomics is the #1 thing. The population that is most killed in Australia, who doesn't have any guns, but the most murdered population are the original Aborigines. And that's a whole other point. I'm going to touch on this real quick. I know I've said it on a previous podcast, but minorities are the ones that are most abused when there is gun control and they do not have the ability to defend themselves. You look at North Tulsa, you look at slavery, you look at all of the gun laws that specifically target minorities. Guess who's not going to need to be afraid of the government? The majority, whatever the majority is. Guess who is going to need to be afraid of the government and protect themselves? It's going to be all kinds of minorities. Minorities need to own guns. If you take away guns from people, you take away from minorities, and they cannot defend themselves. That's how you have slavery. That's how you have Jim Crow laws and all this other stuff until you get to the Black Panthers and the Deacons for Defense were the two groups in the 1960s that helped educate Black people on guns and got them to own firearms. And that's when you start seeing real progress for civil rights and those kinds of things. It's because Black people started owning firearms and showing that they were not afraid to defend themselves. And I'm a big proponent of guns for defensive reasons, especially for that reason.
Gotcha.
Thank you, James.
All right, cool. So, and I told you that I appreciate that reason as well. Even though I still am very anti-gun, I can appreciate that reason. So, Mike,
I'm sorry. Last thing, I swear to God,
okay.
16% of all of the homicides in Australia are against these Aboriginal people, and that's what I'm talking about. Versus the 3% of the general population. So they are targeted because they're a minority and they're unarmed in general.
Gotcha. No, I don't doubt that. I definitely don't doubt that gun restrictions are specifically in place to try and hold back minority communities. So, Michael, Kyle Rittenhouse, what are your opinions? Should he be punished for the murders that happened during the unrest? I want to say it was in Wisconsin. Don't quote me, but I'm pretty sure everyone is familiar or have at least heard of the situation where he had to murder two individuals during a unrest and over death of someone that was shot by police. There's so many. I apologize. I could probably look it up real quick, but go ahead and answer. What do you feel like? Do you feel like he was protecting himself, and do you feel like he should be held or charged criminally for the murders that he committed?
Okay, yeah, Kyle, that whole incident happened right here in my backyard right here in Wisconsin. Yeah, Kyle Rittenhouse, he had come here originally to help the town that he was coming into, came there to help clean graffiti and take care of business. And he actually, at the gas station it was there, I believe he was working there. So that was his employer. That was his job. That's how he was making money. People think, oh, he went across the border from Illinois. That's like from where that incident happened to where he lived, less than 20 minutes, if I remember correctly. It actually was a video that was put out on YouTube that was actually piecing what happened. Kyle was not the aggressor in that instance. He was, from the reports I heard, he was helping see if there were any of the protesters that were hurt. In the beginning of the night, he was being verbally assaulted by one of the men that eventually got killed. That person then saw Kyle, threw something at Kyle, looked a little bit of Molotov, not quite sure, chased Kyle around. That was the first person that got killed. And then everybody freaked out, and Kyle ran back towards the gas station. And then they kept chasing him. One guy kicked him, and that's when the bullets went flying. So no, I think it was a self-defense incident. If Kyle really was a racist and all that horrible stuff people have been calling him, he could just mowed. He had 30 rounds in that mag. He could have killed a lot more people, but he held restraint, and he just was defending himself from those who were attacking him. So yes, I don't think he should be charged with murder. I think he should be. I mean, if anything, you want to get him on the gun law because he's an Illinois resident in Wisconsin, but that doesn't really count because the gun was given to him by somebody else. So
right. So
if you really want to do damage, he could have mowed them all down. He could have said, "The hell with all of you! I'm tired of this nonsense," and just mowed them all down. But he didn't. He held restraint. He was there to help the community, and then the rioters were not helping the community. They were burning down the community.
Gotcha. So let you guys know, I kind of halfway on the whole way that protests have been happening. I feel like at this point, I'm proud that things are being done, or at least enough like noise is being made. But like, it's just hard because it's like I'd rather something be done than nothing, but I'm not a component for burning down and destroying your own neighborhoods. If you're going to do it somewhere where it really matters, not where you live at and sleep at, and there's a bunch of poor people around to.
Yeah, they're burning the wrong
right.
buildings.
That's where I'm like, if you're really going to be about it, do it where it really matters. But
burn the police station, burn the IRS building.
yeah, so no, that's what more my preference, but I'm not out there, so I'm not going to criticize whatever is going on. I'm just proud that people are not laying back. And then there are some times where I'm like, y'all, every situation where a Black person is shot by the police is not an automatic the police are wrong. I've seen a lot where I felt like they have been, but not every single time. And the Kenosha thing, I was a little shaky on because I felt like there were moments where he could have been more responsible in that situation. And there are people that are on two different things. It could have been more training on the police. Don't expect the citizen to know whatever. So I just wanted to put that out there. I think
that's an issue with like a lack of faith in the government. So like we see a situation and we immediately pick a side and find an enemy instead of trying to find a common ground and like the facts of the situation and what happened. And it's because of course the police shot him in cold blood. Like that's way more believable than like, oh, this was a real issue. And it's because that's the narrative the police have wrote for themselves. Too often it's because they shot them in cold blood. And like they need to reestablish the trust within the community if they want people to give them the benefit of the doubt again.
Gotcha. So let me go ahead.
I think many times we say, if we could just change this one thing, if this one thing was this, if this one thing, and that's ultimately what libertarians are saying. It's not one thing. The problems that we're seeing, the symptoms that we're seeing really are a result of gun changes, are a result of the war on drugs, are a result of, a lack of a free market. These are the problems at their root. And that's what we're saying. And trying to advocate, but unfortunately it takes walking backwards all the way for some people to see that bigger picture. You have to look at the bigger picture and then you can understand, wait, that's not the problem. You can't regulate human behavior. It's not possible. If you try to do it, all you're going to do is cause them to become rebellious. Two, if you do somehow try to regulate human behavior, you get exactly what we see today. The only thing that we can do is try to focus on not infringing or harming each other. That at the end of the day. And I know that you keep coming back to this idea that people are going to do, that we believe that people are going to do the right thing. I actually don't believe people will do the right thing if it's the hard path. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, I heard Sarah Brooks say it. We are inherently selfish. That's a Machiavelli mentality. The other side of that would be Rousseau. At the end of the day, we are selfish. So we are going to take the path of least resistance. Ask yourself in every single situation, what is the path of least resistance? And should we change where that path leads? And which one can we make it easier to take a different path that produces a result? And that's exactly what we do with children. It's called classical conditioning. We do it all the time. No, science backs this.
Just to add to your point, when you want to stop littering, do we make littering a felony or do we put more trash cans available to people? It's the path of least resistance. If I have more,
that's true. I can agree with that one.
To put my trash in a trash can instead of carrying it with me for 3 extra blocks, I'm going to put it in a trash can.
Right. Some people will, most people will. I can agree with you with that one. I literally leave it in my car until I get somewhere because I'm just principled like that. So when I get to the Calvert House thing, I'll get chewed out if I do not have a rebuttal to that. People would say, yes, he did cross the state. It was 20 minutes. But the gun was not when he purchased. So when it got into his hands, it did become an illegal gun. He was out past a certain time because there was a curfew mandate, I think at 9:00, and they were all out there. They were all breaking the law on the premise of the laws that he broke. How do you feel about that? Go ahead.
Here's my thing about Kyle. One, all gun laws are unconstitutional. So I don't think he should have followed any of them. He had a right to protect himself, and I'm glad he's okay. I think the situation Kyle's in is a failure on every adult involved. It's a failure on his parents. It is a failure on the police who were there to protect. It is a failure on the rioters who had no business destroying anyone else's property to put him in that situation in the first place.
Okay, so let's go with.
And everyone defending Kyle is not sitting in that cell with him. And when I see Kyle, I do not see a cold-blooded killer. I see a scared little boy. And for anyone to, regardless if he's in the right and the wrong, he now knows what it's like to kill two people. And you can see it in his face that has harmed him. And he's going to live with that forever. So that is a failure. He is a child at the end of the day. And it is our job as adults in the community to protect him and ensure that he was not supposed to be there. So I'm glad that he was able to protect himself and save his own life, because that is his right as an American. But he should have been at home with his parents. And that is his failure.
Right. So that's where I want to go back to. So you said parents, and then we go back to hoping that people do the right thing. But so for me,
like, the rioters were not destroying property. Would Kyle have been there?
So let me go that one. I believe there's a preconceived notion that if there is any type of viral video where there is a Black person killed by police, that there will be that. So I mean, he was already, once he heard that in the daytime, he was already.
If the police were not systematically killing Black people in the streets, would Kyle have been there?
That is true, but that is very true. That is true. That is true.
As if this situation happened in a vacuum, when we are dealing with this issue every day in our streets, and it's not just in the South, it's not just in Colorado, it's everywhere. So you have to stop Kyle well before he crossed that state line, well before he got the idea that let me go help. You had to stop that situation at the police when they had the option not to kill that guy, when they knew people are watching, when they knew people are already heated and do not trust them. You do not kill people. You're on your best behavior, because this is what happens. You knew people would riot, and the people rioting, you have no right to destroy anyone's property. I don't care how mad you are. You didn't know that guy. Why are you destroying someone else's life, making their life harder? So now they're in a position where they have to do bad things just to get by. Gotcha. This is not a vacuum. This is not Kyle's fault, because at the end of the day, Kyle's a kid. This is a failure on every adult that came before him.
So are we going to... Okay, so this is something...
I think the point is, guess what? Yeah, he broke laws, and everything that you're saying, he was already illegal, yet he did it anyway. Right? So laws are not going to solve the problem.
So let me ask this. So this is a solution that I had given to someone. I talk about gun stuff that I would like to see all the time. I will be honest, I'm getting more and more anti-gun as we go by, as I feel like I'm seeing more and more people that are so pro-gun and are not willing to come to the middle at all when it comes to anything that's going on. And I just gave you guys a couple examples of things that I've experienced. I didn't even mention my cousin was killed 2 years ago, walking in the back of his house. Heard some commotion. He said told him to stop, and they just shot him. Didn't even know him at all. And my grandmother has been very affected by that traumatically. I every time I talk to her, there's so much hurt in her voice. I'm hearing that, and he was a person, again, not involved in any gun violence. So like, there are people that are never going to see the freedom gun laws that the way that other people see them, and it does feel like there is no tug or willingness to come to the middle with it. So my personal thought and opinions about guns are starting to become more radically the other way. But when it comes to, I actually forgot my train of thought. Let me just go ahead and go to the next gun question here. Okay, this will be the last like gun thing that I don't want to ask, and I might ask this to you. So let's say that we have a world where there is the type of gun laws that pro-gun people, Second Amendment people want. Actually, answer these two questions. Where you can have a gun, there's very little restrictions, and that's good. Do the people that don't want to participate in gun ownership, are they at a disadvantage in society because they choose to not have that? So let's say that someone is in your face or someone steps on you or someone talks smack about your mom or something like that, and you get, like, yo, like, chill, don't say that, and then they bring out the gun like what you say and bang. So
find out.
right. So what do you think? Do you think that people that don't want to participate are less or are at a heavy disadvantage, and what would that world look like for them? My second question would be, should people have the same military gun access as the United States military? So gun like rocket launchers, machine guns, snipers, ARs, everything. Do you think that they should?
Yes and yes.
Okay. I keep getting Mike. I asked to get Mike in there, so Mike, go ahead. Yeah, I got you. I see Tom. Go ahead.
Yeah, going to your first question about the people who don't want to have firearms. I found out I work in the gun industry part-time, and I do find out a lot of those people are the people whose friend gave them a 10 gauge shotgun with a slug in it and said, "Here, have fun with this. No training, no nothing. Just shot the gun." And now they're scared. Now they don't want nothing to do with it anymore. So I think, like everybody else said, it's education. Where I work at, we teach education. We teach that stuff. Also, there's also we have the ability to arm you with something else. Do you want? We have pepper spray. There's pepper spray. There's self-defense. There's stuff that we teach at, or situational awareness. So that would have get you not in that situation at all. So if you know it's a seedy area, you're not going to put yourself in a situation where you're going to be in harm's way. So I think training and guidance, it would be a contributing fact to helping people if they're against guns altogether, then they can have other options. And that's stuff that's taught actually in gun stores. We actually have classes where I work at where we don't shoot a gun. As basic as that sounds, we don't shoot a gun. And then on your second question about military firearms, I have by this big box behind me, I've got a whole bunch of military guns, and
gotcha.
They haven't. I carry a pistol on my hip every day. And
gotcha. So let me cut you off real quick because we're 4 minutes in before we gotta start to wrap things up. So let's say in the same scenario where I'm like, okay, I don't like the way you talked about my mom, so I'm gonna do something to you. And you know what? I don't even have to worry about you defending yourself because I have this rocket launcher. The moment that you step into your house, bye-bye. Do you think that is something that is healthy for society to be able to do to each other?
This is, again, where we're blaming tools instead of personalities. Why would the character be that flawed? I mean, is there self-responsibility, responsibility for oneself? Why would you be that flawed to have that anger that you want to kill me with a rocket launcher?
I agree,
that's
but
pretty extreme. I mean, it's pretty up there. We had a disagreement with your mom, and however, I'm sorry. I mean, I'm not going to be killed by that. I think we're blaming the tools. And what's to stop you then from coming to my house late at night and stabbing me when I'm sleeping?
Right. There isn't.
Or hitting me on the camera.
Hold on. Get the. There isn't. Sorry. There isn't anything stopping. Okay, there you go. There isn't anything stopping a person from breaking and entering your house and stabbing you. I'm just saying there is at least a window of like, holy shit, like you somehow broke past my security and got in my house and you're in my bed, you're above me. And then I feel like when we look at like let's say lesser weapons, there is a greater chance of survival if someone stabs you as opposed to someone blowing up your entire house with a rocket launcher, in my opinion. But let's move on to the last topic if we gotta wrap things up. So hey, Ryan, I want you to step in on this one. So this year, the Trump administration had banned transgender people from the military. The military is an occupation that is ran by the federal government. Without libertarian government, federal policies protecting trans people, and knowing that trans people are probably the least accepted marginalized group in the country, how would libertarian perspectives prevent those type of things from happening to them? and I'm speaking generally. I don't think that there is going to be any way to get a large margin of people to accept transgender people across the board, at least anytime soon.
Frankly, I don't feel like I can even begin to understand what that's like in the first place, to be honest, to be in that kind of a position. And even if I can just imagine for a moment what it's like, I would say that first and foremost, libertarians are all about equal rights. They should have a right to join just like anybody else, as long as they can do the job. That's, at the end of the day, that's kind of where I stand on that matter. Second of all, we need to downsize the size of the government. That shouldn't be a natural occupation that people want to go after. It is a very worthy job. And I want to be clear here. I definitely support our troops. But at the end of the day, we spend, I believe it's more than, and I think James probably has this number, was it 9 times or 8 times, 6 times the amount on defense than the next 6 countries combined. Is that right, James? Did I get that right?
7, but yeah.
7. Oh, okay. Thank you.
Even worse.
So at the end of the day, the question is a trick question. It shouldn't be about preventing people from being in the military, no matter what the reason is. This goes back to very early on when we were talking about the only reason we need to use the government to equalize things is because rich white men, and I'm going to be honest here, have used the government to, unequalize, I guess, to create inequality. Sorry, thank you. To create the inequality in the first place. If you just remove that entirely from the beginning, your problem becomes you don't need to add more government. We've seen time and time again what happens when we add more and more government. It's just going to make it worse. Just like prohibiting guns, prohibiting drugs, prohibiting anything is just going to make it worse. You are trading the illusion of security for your freedom. Is what you're doing. You're trading it, and some people are okay with that. But libertarians are not.
Gotcha. All right. So since we're at 1:30, so I don't want to hold you guys all night. I would love to actually do a part 2 because we didn't get a chance to talk about war, which is one of the huge issues.
I was waiting for that all night.
Yeah, I know.
I
know. So what we're going to do is we're going to ice the war, and we're going to make the war the entire podcast. Okay. So the whole hour and a half. All right, so I want to go ahead and end the podcast with asking each one of you. Let's see. Let me read this real quick. What are more reliable ways to get better representation during the election for libertarian elected nominees? So I did see the Let Her Speak hashtag. I think everybody done seen it. I do not like that we had 2 old ass racist, in my opinion, candidates on TV, and there were no other options present. So what are you guys' philosophies for forcing more exposure for libertarian candidates? Anybody?
Well, I don't think any libertarian would agree with that force word in the first place. We're not about forcing anybody to do anything. I'm kidding. At the end of the day, it's about going local first and just keeping to get the word out there. It's about passionate people who want to spread this message of liberty. Go this direction. This is the way we want to go. Yes, we still have things we got to figure out. Libertarians fight all the time. And the reason we fight all the time is because we're constantly debating about what the bigger questions are. What should this be? What should that be? I mean, ask any libertarian about the abortion debate and you'll get 2 different kind of answers about what the M.A.P. role plays in it. Is the M.A.P. on the women's rights first, or is it on the baby's life first? Which one violates which first? That's where that question comes in for us. And we don't agree. So we've kind of realized we just need to take the government out of this and let it be a personal decision. So to answer your question more directly, we need to focus on communication, transparency, and education about the libertarian platform.
Perfect. So hopefully this podcast helps in some ways, or in a lot of ways, to be able to get some of the misconceptions out, be able to give challenging narratives or questions to some of the perspectives that a lot of libertarians hold. So like I said, I would love to have you guys back for part 2.
Love to come back.
full on war podcast. So that's a huge issue. I am so sorry we did not get to that. There's so many different topics, and sometimes things run over. So we're going to go ahead and head out from here. We have one more commercial. For those listening, thank you so much for tuning in to For the People of the People. We will be back very soon. Follow our pages on Millennial Anonymous with the Z on Facebook and YouTube. We are going to have far more shows coming up in the future. So please stay tuned. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
For new customers.
Okay, 1 second.